Well, so Friday night was the good night for the Atlanta Hawks. And then yesterday afternoon, okay? So let's see. The Hawks scored 83 points. Let me repeat that. The Hawks scored 83 points in the first half yesterday. Check. Good. The Hawks were up by 22 in the first half. Check. All good. The Hawks at one point had a 24-point lead in the game. Check 3. And then what ended up happening? One of the epic collapses all time for the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks not only didn't win, they lost by 8 points in a game where they laid the ultimate egg of all eggs to the last place team in the Western Conference. Not like it was Golden State or Denver or Memphis. No. I mean, DeJounte Murray in his return to San Antonio, they lost a 24-point lead. And then also they got beat by 8 to the last place team in the Western Conference. And this is what we talk about all of the time with this Hawks franchise. You know, if you think that just firing Nate is the solution to all of the Hawks' problems, and I've said this consistently, okay? And you're not going to like this, but this is the freaking truth, is that it was Nate's fault, Trey's fault, John's fault, DeJounte's fault, Collins' fault, Capella's fault. It's Lauren Jabara's fault. It's the guy in section 214 selling beers. It's the popcorn vendor's fault. It's the guy who's sweeping the floor. Every single person who has an entity that is associated with the Atlanta Hawks, it's all of their fault. And now you see this all come to fruition. This is not just a Nate problem. This is top to bottom. Your front office, everything top to. Let me give you kind of a recap here of what the week was for the Atlanta Hawks. So let's start with last Saturday night against the Boston Celtics. So you did a good job of beating the Washington Wizards in 2 home games that were played. And then you came home against the Boston Celtics. And this was the second night of a back-to-back where the Hawks are, I believe, 2-7 in back-to-back games on the season, okay? So you pretty much figured that coming in to play one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, coming into a back-to-back where you have not played well, even though you were home, that was going to be a tough win. So you lost 134-125. You didn't play a lot of great defense in that game. Okay, that's a consistent theme for the Atlanta Hawks. But then you come on Monday the 13th, and you're at home. You had a day off. You rested up at home, okay? Minnesota is coming into your building, and you feel like, okay, we can get back on track here with a home victory, and we got to protect home court. Even though we lost to Boston on Saturday, that was a tough scenario, okay? You have Minnesota coming in. You lose 136-115. You got blown off your home court. And you figure, okay, you know, maybe the Hawks just needed some rest. They played 3 games in 4 days. And okay, you know, maybe some excuse making, but maybe the Hawks just needed some rest when all was said and done. So you get blown out on your home court against Minnesota. Then you have a few days off. In fact, I think the Hawks had 1 full legitimate day off where they didn't practice or shoot around or anything. So you had Monday night against Minnesota. Then you didn't play again until Friday against Golden State. And you find a way to beat Golden State 127-119. You didn't play all that bad defensively. John Collins had a big night exposing no Draymond Green on the front court. So you took care of your business against Golden State, which you had to win that game. And then you turn around and a couple of days later, you go down and say, okay, maybe we can start to figure some things out here. And you go down to San Antonio, play the worst team in the Western Conference, and you lose after blowing a 24-point lead. You not only lose, but you lose 126-118, where the Hawks scored 35 points in the second half after they scored 83 points in the first half, and they scored 35 the entire second half. And this is the Dow Jones nature of what this team is and what this roster is. So we can blame all the coaches and all that kind of stuff. And I think that what's Quin Snyder's record now? I think he's like 5-9 or 5-8 or 4-8 or something like that. Like it's still the same problems. They're still not a very good team defensively. They still get in these lulls and stuff like that. So you lose to Boston, you get blown out by Minnesota, a big win against the defending champions, and then you blow a 24-point lead. Now, how does all that happen? How does a good team, a team that honestly, and John Collins said this after the game on Friday night, he said, look, our team can play with anybody when they want to. Our team can play with anybody. So how do you get blown out by Minnesota? You handle your business against Golden State, and you lose a 24-point lead where you score 35 points in the second half against the worst team in the Western Conference. Consistently inconsistent. And that has been the theme for this team. No matter how well Trey plays, no matter how well DeJounte Murray plays, or Collins or Capella, at the end of the day, they're a 500 team. And this is why, and I keep circling back to the same narrative and the same mantra over and over again. This is why Tony Ressler isn't willing to dump a bunch of money into going into the luxury tax. Why? And I agree with him. Why? If you're not better than a 500 team, listen, adding a Kevin Huerter or somebody like that isn't going to change the dynamic of what this team is. You could add a player here and a player there and things like that. It's not going to change the overall dynamic of what this team is. There's some fundamental flaw with this basketball team that shows up night in, night out, that you never know what kind of game that you're going to get. Defending, I mean, I really do think that they play up to their competition and they play down to their competition. Because when you lose to Minnesota, and Minnesota's not a bad team, but certainly you should beat Minnesota on your home court. You certainly shouldn't get run by 21 on your home court to Minnesota. And then you lose to the worst team in the Western Conference. They play up and down to what their competition is. They played pretty well against the Celtics. They couldn't stop them. They couldn't stop them on defense in that game last Saturday. And then you did a pretty good job against the Warriors. But it's just so maddening to watch this team. And what have we said consistently on this podcast? They are going to be fortunate just to hang on to the 8th seed. This idea of them being a 6th seed and all, that's bunk. Like that's falderall. Like that's not going to happen. This team is lucky to be hanging on to the 8th seed. And they've had some help. And at times they've beaten a few teams that are right around them. But this team is 500 for a reason. They're not a great defensive team. They get wildly inconsistent with their three-point shooting. And they just have so many flaws that simply changing the coach wasn't going to solve all of the issues. Again, they didn't get that boost that when they fired Lloyd Pierce and Nate McMillan took over, they didn't get that immediate boost. This team is what it is. And it's going to be very interesting. And we've talked a lot about this, about what do you do moving forward? What do you do? Do you gut this thing? Do you change up a piece here or there? You're going to build around Trae Young. I think you keep DeJounte Murray until the trade deadline. If you can't re-sign him or sign him to a new contract or whatever, and they'll roll with some of their guys, but I think that there are going to be pieces that are moved and changed, whether that's Capella or Hunter or Collins. But this group isn't figuring it out. And I don't think that Quin Snyder with an off season and this, that, and the other is going to solve everything for this team. But it's consistently inconsistent how poor that this team plays on a night in, night out basis. All right, let's talk about our friends over at Built Bar. Listen, The March Madness tournament taking place, right? We're in the Sweet 16. Well, Built has got you covered with the Built March Madness bracket. You go to builtmarchmadness.com and vote for your favorite bar or puff at builtmarchmadness.com. So listen, we've got a deal for you. You put your vote in at builtmarchmadness.com, vote for your favorite bar or puff, and you will be entered in to a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built Bars. 50 listeners to our show will get a free box of Built Bars. And not only that, but one lucky fan from Locked On will win a 12-month subscription to have the best Built Bars delivered monthly straight to your doors. So head to builtmarchmadness.com, vote for your favorite bar or puff today, and you'll be entered for a chance to win a free box of Built, and you'll be entered for one 12-month subscription that we're going to give to our fans over at Locked On. Run to builtmarchmadness.com, vote for your favorite bar or puff. Every day you can vote in March. Hop in and support your pick.